The mining colony of Vero was not a place of beauty. It was a settlement built out of metal shelters and dusty platforms, standing on the edge of a desert that stretched farther than the eye could see. The sun above was cruel, a white circle that poured endless heat on the workers below. Every day, men and women dug into the rocky ground, searching for rare minerals that were shipped to distant worlds. Life was hard, but people stayed because even a little wealth here could mean a better life tomorrow. Yet, in the evenings, when the machines grew quiet and the desert winds howled against the thin walls of the colony, people whispered of something else. They whispered of the Forbidden Temple. It was said to be buried deep beneath the sands, older than any human settlement, built by a race long gone. Some claimed it was a place of worship. Others said it was a fortress, filled with traps and secrets. But the most common belief was that inside lay treasures beyond imagination. Not simple gold or jewels, but artifacts of power, knowledge, and energy, things that could change the fate of entire worlds. Ryan sat in the dusty canteen of the miners' quarters, listening as the rumors circled again. He was a pilot, not a miner, but he often sat among them to hear stories. A man who understood people knew that truth often hid inside tales, even if it was wrapped in exaggeration. "Another fool went searching last week," said a grizzled miner with scars across his arms. He set down his drink with a thud. "No one's seen him since. The desert swallows people, same as it always does." Across the table, another miner leaned forward. His voice was hushed, but his eyes gleamed with excitement. "That's not true. He came back. At least, part of him did. Patrol found his crawler near the edge of the dune sea. He was inside, but half burned, like he touched something that should not be touched." The room grew quiet. Even the sound of the wind outside seemed to pause. Ryan watched, saying nothing. He had heard such tales before, though never told with such seriousness. He sipped his water, waiting. The miner continued, lowering his voice further. "Before he died, he said one thing. He said he saw doors of black stone rise from the ground, covered in marks of light. He swore they opened on their own. Someone scoffed, trying to break the tension. And then what? He saw a chest of jewels and a crown fit for a king, but no one laughed." The story felt different this time. At the far side of the room, Myra, the young archaeologist, had been listening too. Unlike the miners, she did not laugh or doubt. She had studied the ruins of many worlds, and she knew the patterns of ancient civilizations. Myths often carried a seed of truth. She rose from her chair and walked toward Ryan's table. "You believe this?" she said, her voice calm but sharp. The scarred miner shrugged. "Believe whatever you want, girl. I say the desert kills, and it kills quick. That's all anyone needs to know." But Myra's eyes were fixed on Ryan. "And you, what do you think?" Ryan leaned back in his chair. He was not easily drawn into schemes. But there was something in her tone, something that suggested she already had a plan. "I think," he said slowly, "that too many people vanish chasing shadows. But I also think the desert does not burn a man alive in a sealed crawler. Something else did that." Myra smiled faintly, though it was not a smile of joy. It was the smile of someone who had found the missing piece to a puzzle. "Exactly," she said. "And I intend to find out what." The miners muttered among themselves, shaking their heads. To them, it was madness. But Ryan knew she would not be stopped. He had seen that kind of determination before, and it often ended in tragedy. Yet he also felt the pull of curiosity. The Forbidden Temple had been just a story to him, something to pass the time. Now, it felt real. That night, when the canteen was empty and the colony lights dimmed, Myra approached Ryan again. They stood near the landing pads where small ships rested, their surfaces covered in fine sand. "I need a pilot," she said simply. "I have maps. Old ones, pulled from archives no one bothers to check. They point to a place where the dunes shift less, where the ground hides something unnatural. I cannot get there alone. Ryan crossed his arms. And if it is nothing, then it is nothing, she replied. But if it is something, it could be the greatest discovery humanity has ever made. Not treasure for the greedy, but knowledge for the bold. Her words stirred something inside him. He had traveled many stars, carried cargo through dangerous routes, and flown mercenaries to distant outposts. But always, it was work, never adventure. Never purpose. And if the stories are true, he asked quietly, and the temple kills those who enter, Myra's gaze did not waver. Then at least we will know the truth. That is worth the risk. Ryan looked out at the desert. The moonlight cast silver across the endless dunes, making them look like waves on a frozen sea. Somewhere out there, hidden beneath the sands, might be doors of black stone, glowing with light. At last, he nodded. Very well. I will fly you. But we need more than maps and courage. We need a crew. The desert will not forgive mistakes. Myra agreed. And so, the first step of their journey was taken, not with the sound of machines or the clash of weapons, but with a quiet promise beneath the night sky. The rumor of the Forbidden Temple had always been a story told in whispers, a tale to frighten or amuse. But now, for Ryan and Myra, it had become something more. It had become a path. And once a path is chosen, it is very hard to turn back. The next morning, the colony was busy with the usual rhythm of mining work. Machines rumbled, dust hung in the air, and the heat of the sun pressed down on everything. Few people noticed Ryan and Myra moving through the markets, gathering supplies. They worked quietly, speaking little, but each knew the weight of the decision they had made. Ryan carried a list in his head. Water, rations, fuel cells, climbing gear, and shields for the crawler. The desert was unforgiving, and one mistake could mean death. Myra walked beside him with a different list, filled with tools of study, scanners, translation pads, and light sources. She was determined to document whatever they found, while Ryan focused on keeping them alive. At the far side of the colony, they found a man working on a crawler, a broad vehicle with thick wheels designed to cross the endless dunes. His name was Laren, a mechanic known for fixing machines that others declared broken beyond repair. His arms were covered in grease, and his eyes narrowed when he saw the pair approach. "You want a crawler," he said before they even spoke. "I can tell by the way you're standing there, half nervous, half stubborn. What for, mining-run desert ride or something more foolish?" Ryan gave a careful smile. "We need something strong. Something that can last many days in the dunes. We will pay fair." Laren leaned against the crawler and crossed his arms. "Payment I can accept. But your faces tell me more than your words. You are chasing the old story, aren't you?" The temple. Myra did not deny it. "We are seeking the truth, nothing more." The mechanic shook his head. "Truth is heavy. It can crush a person faster than sand." Still, after a long pause, he sighed and wiped his hands. "But I will help you. This crawler is strong, and it will take you far. If you survive, bring it back. If not, the desert will keep it." By the next dawn, the crawler was loaded. The crew was small, Ryan as pilot, Myra as archaeologist, and Laren as mechanic, who had decided to join them, perhaps out of curiosity or perhaps because he did not trust them to return his machine. They left the colony while most people still slept, the crawler rolling across the sand like a beast awakened. The desert stretched endlessly. Waves of golden dunes shimmered beneath the sun, and the air danced with heat. Ryan kept his hands steady on the controls, guiding the crawler along the path Myra marked on her maps. She had layered the old records with her own calculations, following signs of strange rock formations and areas where the dunes shifted unnaturally. For 3 days they traveled. The crawlers shook with every climb and descent, and sand clung to their clothes, hair, and gear. At night they set up a small camp beside the vehicle, shielding themselves from the cold winds. Around the fire, Myra often spoke of the builders of the temple. They were not like us, she said, her eyes reflecting the flames. They shaped stone and metal as if it were clay. They left behind puzzles and guardians, things built not for war but for testing. I believe the temple was never meant to hold treasure. It was meant to judge. Laren snorted at that. Judge people how stones do not judge. Machines do not judge. People tell stories, and then they die chasing them. But Ryan listened closely. He did not dismiss her words. He had flown many missions across distant stars, and he had seen ruins of civilizations that once thought themselves eternal. Some left behind weapons. Others left nothing but silence. If the temple truly existed, it would not be simple. On the fourth day, the desert began to change. The dunes grew taller, rising like frozen waves, and between them lay deep valleys of shadow. The air was still, heavy, almost waiting. Myra studied her scanner, her voice sharp with excitement. We are close. The readings show a hollow space beneath the surface. Not natural. This is it. Ryan slowed the crawler at the base of a dune that stood higher than the rest. Its sides were smooth, almost too perfect. As they stepped out, the sand shifted strangely beneath their boots, as if stirred by something below. Laren frowned and checked the ground. This is not right. Sand does not move like this without reason. Then it happened. The dune shivered. Slowly, as if pulled by an invisible hand, the sand slid away from its peak. Grains fell like a river, revealing black stone beneath. Massive doors, taller than any building in the colony, emerged from the shifting sands. They were smooth, seamless, yet covered in glowing patterns of light that twisted like living lines. The three stood in silence, staring. The rumors had been true. The temple was real. Myra stepped forward, her voice trembling not with fear but with awe. Do you see these markings are not random? They are a language. A warning perhaps, or a welcome. Laren gripped his tool belt tightly. It looks more like a trap to me. Ryan kept his eyes on the doors. They had no handles, no hinges, nothing that suggested they could be opened. Yet, as the three approached, the patterns grew brighter. The air vibrated softly, a hum that resonated in their bones. Then, with a sound like a great breath, the doors began to part. The opening revealed a passage descending into darkness. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of stone untouched by time. The desert sun burned hot above, but within the temple lay shadows older than humanity itself. Myra's hands shook as she lifted her scanner. This is it. The entrance. The first step into history. Laren muttered under his breath, the first step into a grave. Ryan placed his hand on the crawler, feeling its solid weight, then looked back at the others. We came for this. There is no turning back now. Stay close, stay sharp. Together, they stepped into the passage. The doors closed behind them without a sound, sealing the desert away. Only the glow of the markings remained, guiding them deeper. The descent had begun. The air inside the temple was cold and heavy, carrying the smell of stone that had not been touched for ages. The glow of the markings on the walls guided their way forward, painting strange symbols in pale light. Every step echoed in the silence, reminding them that they were deep inside something not made by human hands. Ryan walked at the front, his eyes sharp and his hand on the grip of a light beam cutter strapped to his side. Myra followed close, holding her scanner and studying the walls. Laren stayed at the back, muttering to himself as his boots scraped across the smooth floor. He did not like the way the doors had closed behind them without command. The passage sloped downward, winding into the earth. Sometimes the walls curved, sometimes the ceiling opened high above them, carved into arches decorated with patterns of light. Myra whispered as she traced the shapes with her fingers. These are not just decorations. They tell a story. The builders wanted anyone who entered to see their history. Ryan glanced back. Can you read it? Not yet, she admitted, her eyes glowing with excitement. But the style suggests warnings, like a message left for whoever dares to enter. Laren grunted. Warnings we should obey. This place is not welcoming. It feels like it wants us gone. But they pressed on. The deeper they went, the louder the hum of energy became, faint but steady, like a heartbeat running through the stone. After nearly an hour, the passage opened into a vast chamber. Their lights revealed a floor of polished black stone that reflected like glass. At the far end stood a doorway, carved in the shape of a perfect circle. It glowed faintly, as if waiting for them. Between where they stood and the doorway stretched a long path, divided into square tiles. Each tile was marked with a different symbol. Some were simple shapes like circles or triangles, while others were far more complex. Ryan stopped. His instincts told him that the path was not as simple as it appeared. Careful, he warned. This is not just a floor. It is a puzzle. Myra crouched, studying the tiles. Yes. This is a test. Look at the way the symbols repeat. They are part of a pattern. Laren looked at the floor with suspicion. Or maybe they are part of a trap. As if answering him, the moment Ryan stepped 1 foot forward, the chamber reacted. The tiles nearest to them glowed faintly, and the walls trembled. From the ceiling, thin slits opened, revealing the tips of hidden spears of energy. Ryan froze. His heart pounded. One wrong move could bring death. Myra quickly scanned the tiles. Her voice was urgent but steady. It is a path puzzle. Some tiles are safe, others are not. We must follow the correct sequence. Step on the wrong one, and the temple will strike. Ryan looked at her. Which one first? Myra studied the symbols, running her finger across her scanner. The builders used repeating numbers in their markings. Look there. The circle, then the triangle, then the star. That order is safe. Trusting her, Ryan stepped onto the circle tile. Nothing happened. The light beneath his foot glowed brighter, as if accepting him. Good, Myra said. Now the triangle. Ryan took the next step. Again, nothing. Now the star, Myra whispered. Step by step, he moved forward, while Myra called the symbols. Laren followed last, his eyes darting around the chamber, waiting for something to go wrong. Halfway across, the puzzle grew more complex. Some symbols were repeated too closely, others seemed like false copies. Myra's voice grew tighter as she calculated. Not that star, Ryan. The one to the left. The other is a decoy. Ryan obeyed, stepping where she directed. The tile lit up, safe. The decoy tile next to it suddenly burst with fire, a flash of energy that scorched the air. Laren swore and stumbled back, barely avoiding the heat. That could have been us, he muttered. This temple does not test. It kills. Ryan kept his focus. Keep calling the path, Myra. We are too far to turn back. Step after step, they crossed, until at last Ryan stepped onto the final tile. The glow of the path stretched across the chamber, leading directly to the round doorway. The energy spears above them withdrew into the ceiling, and the chamber grew still again. They had passed the first trap. Beyond the doorway lay another passage. This one was narrower, the walls closer, and the air colder. Strange shapes jutted out from the stone blades, spikes, and hidden vents that suggested more dangers. Laren stopped, running his hand along the wall. These are machines. Still active. If we trigger the wrong thing, this whole passage will tear us apart. Myra's scanner buzzed with warning signals. The floor has pressure plates. They connect to the walls. Step on one, and the traps will activate. Ryan tested the floor with his boot. The tile sank slightly, and immediately a blade swung from the wall, slicing through the air with terrifying speed. He pulled back in time, his breath sharp. "Confirmed," he said. "We move only where the plates do not shift. Watch every step." For the next stretch, they advanced slowly. Ryan moved first, using his sharp eyes to spot the faint cracks where the plates were loose. He marked safe places with chalk from his pocket. Myra followed, balancing carefully, her heart racing with every step. Laren, though nervous, moved with surprising steadiness, his mechanics eye-catching details the others missed. At one point, a gust of air burst from a vent, nearly pushing Myra into a deadly plate. Ryan grabbed her arm, pulling her back in time. Their eyes met, breath heavy, the danger a reminder of how fragile their lives were in this place. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the end of the passage. A tall door of stone stood before them, carved with more glowing symbols. Unlike the first doors, this one was sealed with a strange lock shaped like interlocking rings. Myra studied it closely. "This is not a trap. It is another test. We must align the rings in the right order, or the door will remain shut." Laren gave a tired laugh. "Better a puzzle than blades at our throats." Working together, they turned the rings. Each click echoed in the chamber, and with every wrong attempt, the symbols dimmed. Myra's hands moved quickly, her mind racing, until at last the rings aligned into a pattern of a rising sun. The door rumbled, splitting open. Beyond lay darkness once again, but this time, the air carried something more. A sense of weight. A sense of watching. They had survived the traps, but they knew the temple was only beginning to reveal its true nature. The heavy stone door slid open, its grinding echo fading into the depths. Ryan, Myra, and Laren stepped forward, their lights casting long shadows on the ground. The air here felt different, thicker, as though they had entered the heart of the temple. The passage ahead was vast, supported by towering columns carved with spirals of glowing script. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness, and the silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of their own steps. Myra moved closer to the carvings, her eyes wide with wonder. "These are not warnings. These are instructions. The builders wanted those who entered to understand something. This place was not only made to protect but also to teach." Laren rubbed the back of his neck, uneasy. "Teach or trap, it makes little difference. If the last rooms tried to kill us, what will this one do?" Ryan stayed alert, scanning the hall. His instincts told him they were not alone. The feeling of being watched pressed against his thoughts, steady and unshakable. He raised a hand, signaling for silence. At the far end of the chamber, a shape stood among the shadows. At first, it looked like another statue carved from stone. It was tall, nearly twice the height of a human, with broad shoulders and arms like pillars. Its face was smooth, featureless, only marked by two glowing points where eyes should be. Then it moved. The sound was low and grinding, stone sliding against stone. The figure stepped forward, its footsteps shaking the floor. Another figure emerged from the shadows beside it, then another. 3 guardians now stood between the explorers and the path ahead. Laren muttered under his breath, gripping a tool from his belt. "I knew it. Statues that move. Why is it always statues that move?" Myra stared, her voice filled with awe and fear. "They are protectors. The builders left them here to test those who dared to enter. If we fight, we will lose. They are too strong." The guardians advanced, slow but certain. Their glowing eyes locked onto the intruders. The explorers backed away, their minds racing. Ryan's voice was steady. "If fighting is useless, then we find another way. Think, Myra. What do they want? Myra's gaze darted to the carvings on the walls. She studied the spirals of light and the repeated symbols. Her heart pounded as the guardians drew closer, their heavy steps echoing like drums. They are not meant to destroy, she whispered. They are meant to measure. To test the spirit of those who enter. We must show them something that proves we are worthy. Laren frowned. And how do we do that? They look ready to crush us. But Myra stepped forward, holding her scanner high. She spoke in a clear voice, though fear shook her chest. We are not enemies. We are seekers. We come for knowledge, not conquest. The guardians paused. Their glowing eyes brightened slightly, as if considering her words. Then, without warning, one raised its arm and brought it down with immense force. The floor cracked, sending dust into the air. The explorers barely kept their balance. Ryan pulled Myra back. Words are not enough. They want action. The guardians spread out, blocking every path but forward. Then, one of them extended its arm, pointing toward a raised platform in the center of the chamber. Upon it rested 3 stone slabs, each carved with a different puzzle of symbols. Myra understood at once. They want us to solve them. It is a trial of mind, not of strength. They hurried to the platform. The puzzles were intricate, each slab filled with shapes, numbers, and lines. Ryan and Laren exchanged uneasy glances. Laren groaned. This is not what I signed up for. I fix machines, I do not solve alien riddles. Myra was already working, tracing the first slab with her fingers. These are patterns of balance. The builders used mathematics in their art. We must align the symbols to complete the design. The guardians stood motionless, but their glowing eyes watched every movement. Ryan kept his focus on them while Myra worked, ready to act if they moved again. His hand stayed near his cutter, though he doubted it would do more than scratch the stone giants. Minutes passed. Myra solved the first puzzle, sliding the symbols into a perfect circle. The slab glowed brightly, then sank into the platform. One guardian stepped back, its stance relaxing. They respond, Myra said with relief. We must finish the rest. The second puzzle was more complex. It showed a series of lines broken into fragments, with empty spaces between them. Myra worked quickly, her mind racing, but the shapes twisted in ways that did not make sense. Laren crouched beside her, frowning. Wait. These are like gears. Look here. If this one shifts, the others align. It is mechanical logic. He adjusted the fragments, turning them like cogs. Slowly, the lines connected into a flowing design. The slab glowed and lowered into the platform. The second guardian stepped back, silent and still. Only one remained. The third puzzle was unlike the others. It was not shapes or lines but a series of glowing symbols that pulsed with light. Myra studied them, but her face paled. This is not math. It is language. They want us to speak their words. She pressed her hand to the scanner, trying to translate, but the device struggled with the complexity. The guardians began to move again, their heavy steps echoing louder as if time was running out. Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady though he did not understand the symbols. If it is language, then it is about meaning. What do they want to hear? Myra's eyes widened as realization struck. Unity. That is the key. All the carvings spoke of unity and strength through togetherness. She placed her hand on the slab and spoke, her voice echoing in the chamber. We are one. We stand together. The symbols flared brightly, glowing so strong the chamber filled with light. The last slab sank into the platform. The final guardian stepped back, lowering its arms. All 3 bowed their heads, silent acknowledgement of the explorer's worth. The path ahead opened. Another great door slid aside, revealing a deeper passage into the heart of the temple. Ryan let out a long breath. We passed. But if this was only the beginning, what comes next? Myra looked at the retreating guardians, her voice soft. They were not our enemies. They were our judges. And we proved ourselves. Laren shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. If we keep proving ourselves like this, I will not survive to see the end. But despite his words, he followed when Ryan and Myra stepped forward. Together, they moved beyond the Chamber of Guardians, deeper into the mystery that waited ahead. The door closed behind them, sealing the Chamber of Guardians in silence. Ahead stretched a corridor unlike any they had seen so far. The walls shone with a soft blue glow, and veins of crystal pulsed faintly as though carrying energy through the stone itself. The air was cooler, cleaner, as if untouched by the desert above. Ryan kept his hand close to his cutter, though he doubted weapons would help against what they had already faced. Myra walked at his side, her eyes bright with excitement, scanning every surface. Laren followed more slowly, his hand brushing the walls in wonder. Even his cautious heart could not deny the strange beauty of this place. The corridor led them into a vast chamber, larger than the colony's landing bays. Its ceiling arched so high it seemed to vanish into the shadows above. In the center stood a raised platform, carved from black stone. Upon it floated a massive crystal, suspended in the air without any support. It glowed with a deep, shifting light, colors moving across its surface like waves on water. The three stopped in awe. Myra stepped forward, her breath catching. This is it. The heart of the temple. The builders preserved something here. The crystal pulsed, and the chamber seemed to respond. Faint lines of light spread from the platform, running across the floor and up the columns like veins awakening. The hum of energy grew stronger, steady, and alive. Laren frowned. It feels like it is watching us. Ryan nodded slowly. Not just watching. Listening. As if hearing his words, the crystal brightened. A low sound filled the chamber, not quite a voice, not quite music. It was a rhythm, ancient and patient, that touched the mind more than the ear. The explorers felt the vibration inside their skulls, a presence pressing gently against their thoughts. Myra clutched her scanner, which flickered wildly with unreadable signals. It is communicating. Not in words, but in memories. It wants us to see. The light grew brighter until the chamber disappeared around them. For a moment, they were weightless, standing not on stone but inside a vision. Images filled their minds, vast and overwhelming. They saw a great city beneath alien skies, towers of silver rising above rivers of light. The builders moved through the streets, tall figures robed in flowing garments, their faces hidden in shadow. Their hands shaped stone and crystal as if they were clay, bending matter to their will. Then the vision shifted. The city trembled as fire rained from the heavens. Ships of war, dark and sharp, descended upon the towers. The builders fought, their machines rising to defend, but the enemy was relentless. The skies burned red, and the rivers of light shattered. Another vision followed. Survivors gathered inside the temple. They carved the walls, built the guardians, and placed the crystal at its heart. Their faces were tired, their eyes full of sorrow, but they worked with purpose. They left their knowledge behind, sealed away for whoever would find it. Not gold, not weapons, but wisdom. The final vision showed a warning. The builders pointed to the stars, where shadows spread like a storm. Unity was the only hope, their message declared. A people divided would fall, as they had fallen. The light faded, and the explorers found themselves standing in the chamber once more. The crystal floated silently, its glow calm, as though waiting for their response. Myra's face was pale, her hands trembling. We saw their history. Their rise, their fall. They left this place to pass on what they learned. The true treasure is not riches, but knowledge. Laren shook his head slowly, trying to steady his breath. All that power, All those wonders, and they were destroyed anyway. If they could not survive, what chance do we have? Ryan's eyes stayed fixed on the crystal. We survive because we are different. They built walls and puzzles to test each other, but we build trust. That is why we made it this far. As if answering him, the crystal pulsed again. The light spread outward, filling the chamber with warmth. Then, a beam of pure energy extended toward the explorers, stopping just before them. It hovered like an invitation. Myra stepped closer, her voice soft. It is offering itself. The knowledge inside can be taken, stored, and carried away. But once we accept, there may be no turning back. Ryan exchanged a look with her. What if it is too much for us? What if it destroys us like it destroyed them? Myra shook her head firmly. Knowledge does not destroy. Division does. That is what their message meant. Laren crossed his arms, torn between fear and wonder. Or maybe it is a trap, waiting to burn us like the stories said. Silence filled the chamber. The three of them stood before the crystal, the weight of choice heavy on their shoulders. Ryan thought of the miners back in the colony, living day by day with no hope of change. He thought of humanity among the stars, young and fragile compared to the ancient empires they might one day face. Perhaps this was not just an opportunity, but a chance to prepare. At last, he stepped forward, placing his hand into the beam. The crystal flared with light, and energy surged into him. His mind filled with streams of images and symbols, flowing too fast to follow, but not painful, not overwhelming. It felt like water pouring into an empty vessel, filling spaces he had not known were hollow. Myra reached forward, joining him, then Laren, though his hand shook with hesitation. The three stood together as the crystal shared its gift. When the light faded, they stepped back, breathless but alive. The crystal dimmed, its task complete. The platform beneath it lowered slightly, as though bowing in farewell. Myra's eyes shone with tears. It trusted us. It chose us. Laren rubbed his head, still dizzy. I do not understand half of what I saw, but I know this. Humanity is not ready for all of it. Not yet. Ryan nodded. Then we carry it carefully. Not as treasure to be hoarded, but as guidance for what lies ahead. The chamber grew quiet again. The builder's legacy rested now in human hands, not as a weapon or a tool of greed, but as a story, a warning, and a chance. Together, the three explorers turned back toward the path they had come, ready to carry their discovery to the world above. The heart of the temple had given them its truth. What they did with it would shape the future of their people. The chamber of the crystal grew quiet once more, its glow fading to a gentle pulse. Ryan, Myra, and Laren stood in silence, their hearts still racing after what they had seen and felt. The knowledge of the builders was inside them now, not fully understood but alive in fragments of memory and meaning. Ryan broke the silence first. We have what we came for. Let us go before this place changes its mind. But as he turned toward the exit, the crystal pulsed again. The floor trembled beneath their feet. From the walls, new lines of light spread outward, weaving patterns across the chamber. The great door they had entered began to close, sealing them inside. Laren swore under his breath. I knew it. It was too easy. The temple is not finished with us. Myra looked at the glowing symbols racing along the walls. It is not trying to trap us. It is giving us one final test. The floor shifted, and the platform holding the crystal sank deep into the ground until it vanished. In its place, a ring of stone rose from the floor, forming a circle wide enough to hold them all. The glowing patterns converged upon it, marking it as the center of the chamber. Ryan's instincts sharpened. It wants us to stand there. Myra nodded. This is the test of worth. The builders needed to know not only if we could solve their puzzles, but also if we carried the right spirit. Alone, we are nothing. Together, we may succeed. With cautious steps, the three of them moved onto the ring. The moment they stood within it, the walls of the chamber rippled with light. From the shadows at the edges, shapes began to emerge. The guardians had returned. But these were not the same three they had faced before. These ones were taller, broader, their stone forms glowing with energy veins. Their movements were faster, smoother, no longer heavy like statues but alive with fluid strength. 6 of them stepped forward, surrounding the circle. Laren gripped his tools, panic flashing in his eyes. We cannot fight 6 of them. We will be crushed. Myra shook her head, her voice steady. No. This is not about fighting. Look. The guardians did not strike. Instead, they lowered their arms and stood waiting, as though expecting something from the humans. The circle beneath the explorers glowed brighter, symbols forming around their feet. The hum of energy filled the chamber like a heartbeat. Ryan understood. It is a trial of unity. It will test if we stand together or fall apart. The floor shifted again, dividing the circle into 3 smaller sections. Each of them now stood on a separate piece of stone, as though the temple itself meant to pull them apart. At once, the guardians raised their arms. Energy surged between them, forming barriers of light that closed around each section. Ryan, Myra, and Laren were cut off from each other, trapped in glowing walls. A voice filled the chamber. It was not a voice of words but of meaning, pressing directly into their minds. Each of them heard the same message: choose. Will you stand for yourself, or will you stand together? Ryan's section of the floor lit up, forming shapes of weapons from pure light. He could pick them up, hold them, and fight if he wished. Myra's section filled with books and tools of knowledge, glowing with promise. She could claim them for herself, taking wisdom and leaving the others behind. Laren's section shifted into images of wealth, piles of shining ore and energy crystals, more than he had ever dreamed of. The guardians stepped closer. The meaning of the test was clear. Each of them was tempted with personal gain. If they chose selfishly, they would fail. If they stood together, they might survive. Ryan clenched his fists. The weapons called to him, offering strength, offering power to defeat anything in his path. But he thought of Myra and Laren. Alone, weapons would mean nothing. He stepped away from them. Myra trembled as she stared at the glowing books. Her heart yearned for the knowledge inside, secrets of worlds lost to time. But she remembered the message of the builders. Knowledge without unity led only to ruin. She lifted her head and turned from them. Laren's eyes lingered longest on the wealth. He had always dreamed of leaving the colony behind, living free of hunger and dust. Here was the chance to claim it. Yet he thought of Ryan's steady leadership, Myra's fearless pursuit of truth, and the bond they had formed through danger. Wealth without them would be emptier than the desert itself. He stepped back. At that moment, the glowing temptations vanished. The barriers of light dissolved, and the circle beneath them blazed with brilliant energy. The guardians paused, their glowing eyes shifting from harsh red to soft gold. Slowly, they lowered their arms, bowing their heads in silent recognition. The chamber itself seemed to sigh, a deep vibration of approval. Myra's voice trembled with relief. We passed. We chose each other. The voice returned, filling their minds once more. You are worthy. Take what we have given and carry it with care. Do not fall as we fell. The guardians stepped back into the shadows, their forms fading into stone once more. The chamber grew still. The great door opened again, this time revealing not darkness but a glowing path that led upward, toward the surface. Ryan exhaled, his body heavy with exhaustion. It is finished. The temple has judged us, and we live. Laren rubbed his face, still shaken. I never thought I would turn away from treasure. But now, I think I understand. Some treasures are not meant for one person. They are meant for all. Myra smiled faintly, though her eyes carried the weight of what they had learned. The builders left us more than knowledge. They left us a lesson. If humanity listens, perhaps we will not repeat their fate. Together, they stepped off the circle and walked toward the exit. The glowing path lit their way, gentle and sure, guiding them back through the temple's halls. The traps and puzzles no longer stirred. The doors opened for them without resistance, as though the temple itself now trusted them. At last, they emerged into the desert night. The stars stretched across the sky, endless and bright. Behind them, the black stone doors sank into the sand once more, hiding the temple until it was called upon again. They stood in silence beneath the sky, the cool wind brushing against their faces. They had entered seeking treasure, and they had left with something far greater. The test of worth was complete. The desert stretched endlessly around them, silent under the night sky. Stars glittered like diamonds scattered across a dark sea. Ryan, Myra, and Laren stood together outside the hidden entrance of the Forbidden Temple. The heavy doors had already sunk back into the sand, sealing away the ancient structure once more. It looked as though the temple had never existed, yet each of them knew the truth of what lay beneath. The three explorers felt the weight of their journey pressing on them, but it was not the same weight they had carried before. It was heavier, yes, but also brighter, filled with meaning. Inside them lived the knowledge of the builders, a legacy of a people who had risen, fallen, and left behind their final gift. Laren broke the silence first. We should tell no one. If the colony learns about what we found, they will not understand. They will come here with greed in their hearts, and the temple may not forgive. Ryan looked out across the dunes, his face unreadable. You are right about the danger. But keeping it hidden forever would betray the builders' message. They wanted us to learn from them, to grow stronger, to avoid their mistakes. Myra nodded softly. This is the true treasure. Not gold, not gems, not endless wealth. It is knowledge, wisdom, and a warning. If we hide it, the sacrifice of the builders will be wasted. The desert wind carried their voices away, as if the world itself listened. The journey back to the colony was long and harsh. Sandstorms forced them to take shelter, and the sun burned their skin during the day. Yet none of them complained. The temple had tested their unity, and the bond they now shared carried them forward. At last, the dull shapes of the colony came into view. Towers of metal and stone rose from the sand, ringed by walls to keep out the storms. Smoke from the power generators rose into the sky, mixing with the thin clouds above. It was not beautiful, but it was home. When they entered the gates, workers stopped and stared. The three explorers had been gone far longer than expected, and many had thought them lost. Questions rained down on them, but Ryan raised his hand, silencing the crowd. We will tell you what we have found, he said, his voice steady. But first, we must speak to the council. The council of elders gathered quickly inside the meeting hall, a long room filled with maps and records. The explorers stood before them, still covered in dust from their journey. The head elder, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, leaned forward. You entered the Forbidden Temple. Few have returned from there alive. Tell us what you found. Myra stepped forward, her voice clear though her heart pounded. We found no gold, no jewels, no endless riches. What we found was greater. The builders who created the temple left behind their story. They showed us their rise and their fall. They warned us of what destroyed them. Division. Greed. Isolation. They left us their knowledge so we might avoid their fate. The elders exchanged uncertain glances. One of them frowned. You expect us to believe this without proof. Knowledge cannot feed hungry mouths. Warnings cannot build stronger walls. Laren lifted his head, his usual doubt replaced by quiet strength. I too thought only of wealth before we entered. I dreamed of filling my hands with treasure. But when the temple tested me, I turned away. The builders judged us not by our strength, but by our unity. That is the proof. We returned alive only because we stood together. Ryan placed his hands on the table, his voice firm. The true treasure is not for us alone. It is for all of humanity. The builders spoke of shadows spreading across the stars. They warned that without unity, we too will fall. We must share what we have learned, and we must change, or their sacrifice will be wasted. Silence filled the hall. The elders looked into the faces of the three explorers. They saw no greed in their eyes, no hunger for power. They saw truth. At last, the head elder spoke again, her voice softer than before. Then you will teach us. You will share this knowledge, carefully, so that it strengthens us without dividing us. This is your burden now. Myra bowed her head. It is a burden we accept. And so it began. In the weeks that followed, the explorers worked day and night, writing down the fragments of memory the crystal had given them. The knowledge was vast, filled with patterns of energy, designs of machines, and histories of ancient wars. Much of it was too complex to understand at once, but piece by piece, it revealed its meaning. Myra studied the lessons of science and history, carefully translating them into words the colony could use. Laren, who once thought only of riches, helped explain the warnings about greed and division, using his own temptations as an example. Ryan guided the effort, making sure they shared the builders' knowledge without letting it become a tool for selfishness. Slowly, the colony began to change. Farmers learned new methods of growing food from the builders' wisdom. Engineers discovered cleaner ways to power the machines. The people began to see themselves not as separate families struggling alone, but as one united community. Yet the true weight of the treasure lay not in what they gained, but in what they remembered. Every lesson carried a shadow, a reminder of the builder's fall. Every discovery was a gift that came with a warning. One night, as the stars burned brightly above, the three explorers met again on the colony wall. The desert stretched before them, endless and silent. Laren looked out at the dunes. "Do you think the temple will ever open again?" Myra shook her head. "It does not need to. Its purpose is complete. We carry it now." Ryan's eyes stayed on the stars. "Perhaps one day, others will find temples like this on other worlds. Perhaps humanity will face the same choice again and again. But if we remember what we learned here, we will be ready." For a long moment, the three stood in silence, the wind brushing against their faces. They were no longer the same people who had entered the temple. They were something more, something stronger. The true treasure of the Forbidden Temple was not wealth or power. It was unity, knowledge, and the strength to choose together over selfishness. And that treasure, unlike gold or gems, would never fade.